with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly podcast reviewing two new or recent release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find more of my work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes and spin-off podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. This week on Patreon, I'm still going strong with my Severance Season 2 episode reviews, releasing every Friday. This season is amazing. The show is amazing. I am just delighted to get to talk about Severance. So that's up on Patreon. And as I've been doing the last few episodes, I'm doing companion reviews for each episode of Obsessive Viewer this year. In this week's companion reviews, in the companion review episode on Patreon, I reviewed 2018's Burning and 2020's Underwater. And I've also got hopefully by the time you guys are listening to this, a January monthly wrap-up episode for the $10 patrons. And of course, we have an OV B-roll episode that Sam and I, my guest Sam, who I have not yet introduced yet, Sam and I just recorded ahead of recording this episode. So once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for all of that and a bunch more content. But if you want to support me without messing with Patreon or doing anything like that, you can always quote unquote buy me a coffee with the link in the show notes of this episode, or just go to buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay, so tonight on the show, I'm going to be reviewing the new sci-fi drama, I think, Love Me, in this week's secondary review. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news before we review the new Nicholas Stoller comedy, You're Cordially Invited, in this week's feature review. And joining me tonight is my friend and IFJA colleague, whose work can be found at MidwestFilmJournal.com, and he can be followed on Letterboxd at the handle of Sam Movie Man. It is the aforementioned Sam Watermeier, making his first appearance on the podcast in 2025. Welcome back to the show, Sam. How are you doing this early evening?
I'm good. I'm excited to be on the show. First of 20 appearances for this year.
I'm going to hold you to that. You've got a number to beat because you were on 12 episodes last year. So, yeah, I'm glad that we have that documented.
Yes, so hold me to that. But I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining me. And yeah, it's I'm very excited to chat movies with you, as I always am. But if you guys want to follow some of Sam's work recently, in the past month, he has reviewed both of the movies that I reviewed last week on the podcast, Companion and Presence, over at MidwestFilmJournal.com. And of course, I believe he talked about it in his previous appearance on the show, but for Denzelmber at Midwest Film Journal, he reviewed Fallen. So definitely check those out. Links in the show notes. Go to MidwestFilmJournal.com. Sam, how did you feel about Companion and Presence, just briefly?
I liked them both. I thought Presence was a surprisingly effective family drama. I thought that my worry was that it would be kind of all style, no substance, but I actually found myself more engaged in the story and the performances than the sort of novelty of the way it's filmed.
Yeah.
Which, just is a testament to the power of a good story. Without, you can have cool camera trickery, but without a compelling story, it's nothing. So, so thankfully it has both.
Nice. Yeah.
So Companion, I thought was a lot of fun. It's kind of one of those movies that you can imagine people watching and thinking that the technology at the center of it is a good idea, even though the movie is begging them to think the opposite of that.
Yes.
I think even in my review, I said something like, I can picture some tech bro saying like, a robot companion, we got to get on that.
Right.
James Cameron warned us about self-aware technology.
Yep.
Like 40 years ago now, and we still haven't taken the hint.
Yeah, and we never will. We never will. Yeah. It's terrible. Two things about Companion I want to just touch on really quickly is that one, I feel like, answer me this, I don't necessarily want to spoil it, but like when there is a very strategic needle drop that kind of gives an impression of why the character's name is Iris.
Oh, yeah.
Did you enjoy that as much as I did and as much as I feel that you definitely did?
Oh, I totally geeked out.
Nice.
Because it's so layered when you realize, like, not only how it relates to her character, but also one of the actors in the movie.
I don't think I made that connection.
Jack Quaid being Meg Ryan's son.
I didn't even think about. I didn't think about all. Okay, gotcha. That's awesome.
Yeah, the listeners are going to be like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
But I think it works on several different levels, and I really appreciated that needle drop.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was very tickled by that. And the other thing I want to bring up about Companion that I didn't even realize this, as stupid as it is probably going to sound, but the name Iris, it's Siri spelled backwards. Like, I don't know if that's like something that was in the mind of the writer when he wrote it, but I was just like, oh, okay. So,
I actually didn't think about that until now.
Yeah.
That's a good observation.
Yeah. I stole it off of a Letterboxd review that I read, to be fair, to be completely transparent.
Well, whoever said that, that's very astute.
Yes.
But, what's interesting too, is that the movie, it came out, January 31st. And 50 years ago, in early February is when the Stepford Wives came out.
Oh, interesting.
Which shares a lot in common with Companion.
Yeah.
And it goes to show, I guess, how little the world has changed over the course of 50 years. That we're still, making satires about women being, robotic and under the control and oppression of men. So
yeah, that's wow.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I don't think I think I've only seen the remake of Stepford Wives. But by the way, the Letterboxd user was Mike Zilla. So yeah, so he's the one that pointed that out.
Shout out to Mike Zilla.
Yes. If you're listening, thank you, and also thank you for allowing me to sound like I know what the fuck I'm talking about for at least one brief shining moment.
I mean, I would have believed, that you would have made that observation as well.
Thank you.
I know that sounds like a horrible backhanded compliment.
No. I should run with that. Like, oh yeah, back in the day, I was in like a boardroom, and they were pitching like a sequel to a movie. So I basically just took out a Sharpie and just wrote on the board alien, and I put a $sign at the end. And yeah. So that was me. That was all me. But anyway, you can follow Sam's work at MidwestFilmJournal.com and also follow him on Letterboxd at SamMovieMan. Yeah, so like I said, we're gonna talk You're Cordially Invited here in a bit, but I do want to just really briefly touch on some of the stuff that's playing this week in Indianapolis in the segment there where I blather on about what's playing in Indy this week. Few just quick fire stuff. Alamo Drafthouse is having a movie party screening of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World on February 12th. And over at the Can on February 15th and 16th, they are showing, oh my God, David Lynch's Wild at Heart. So that's interesting. And then also at Living Room Theaters downtown, they're showing Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me. And then at Keystone Art on their retro replay things on Tuesdays, February 11th, they're showing A Beautiful Mind. And on February 18th, they're showing The Departed. And finally, rounding out this section is Flicks Brewhouse and Carmel. On the 13th, they're showing Bridesmaids. And on the 14th and 18th, they're showing Notting Hill. So that's what's playing this week in Indy. Sam, does any of those jump out at you, or any comments?
I'm kind of curious. Is there any theme behind why they're showing A Beautiful Mind and The Departed?
Yes, I believe it's Academy Award Best Picture winners. Did they both win Best Picture?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Best Picture winners. So like a few weeks ago they showed, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, they showed Driving Miss Daisy. They also showed The Deer Hunter, which I wanted to go to, but I didn't.
Interesting. I saw The Departed when it was first released in theaters.
Nice.
Actually saw it twice. I didn't see A Beautiful Mind. And gosh, Driving Miss Daisy, I bet that holds up like a lead balloon.
I can't even imagine. Especially when you have something as great as Green Book to come out, right? In its shadow,
which also won Best Picture.
It did. It sure did. Awfully. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's something. Obviously, it's very well documented how I feel about Green Book. But let's turn the pages of this episode like a book.
Nice.
Yeah, that was terrible, but thank you so much for your support, Sam. But yeah, let's talk some news before the reviews. So I was telling Sam before we were recording that I was going to make a list of news items to talk about for the episode. And then I realized that it's really just all about one specific movie. So I'm going to kind of go through, we're going to save the two big reveals to talk about for the last one of this string of things. But there have been a slew of casting announcements for Scream 7, which is going to be coming in February of 2026. From director Kevin Williamson.
Wait, what?
Did you not know that?
No.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. He's directing it. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yep.
That's exciting.
It is. And like Guy Busick is writing it, who I believe he co-wrote the 5 and 6. But yeah, Kevin Williamson is directing.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and it's something. Like I'm super excited about it. Like I'm very excited for it. It's so interesting to look at the trajectory of Scream 7 in terms of its production. Obviously, it was originally going to be directed by Christopher Landon, and it was going to follow the Carpenter sisters and their story, the Core Four, all of that. And then Melissa Barrera got fired because of pro-Palestine social media posts that she made, and that caused a whole big backlash and everything. And like to be fair, there are plenty of people in the Scream fandom who are still saying that they're going to boycott Scream 7 because of that, which I understand and I respect that. I'm still going to see it just because it's Scream. I can't not, but it's interesting because a lot of the cynical responses around the internet have been that like, oh, okay, they're bringing on Kevin Williamson to direct because they need to sell the movie. They need to get people to see the movie. And it's like maybe a little bit of that, but also like Kevin Williamson created the franchise. Like he's not going to jump on board a project to save face for to help Spyglass save face. Like he's going to have something that he is going to want to leave his mark on the franchise as a director with. But yeah, so I don't know. There's a lot of like hardcore terminally online people that are kind of, I guess, chronically online, that are kind of,
eventually it will be terminal.
Eventually, yes, it will. But Kevin Williamson is directing. I'm eager to see what he does with it. There was an Instagram post that he did like after the first day of filming. He said something like it was a very sweet, very sweet message where he said something like, I'm probably going to get in trouble from Spyglass for this, but I just want to say that this is the experience of a lifetime for me to like it was it was a very touching post just about his position as director of Scream 7 now, and how he plans on honoring Wes Craven and in so many ways and all that. It was a very touching post, but I'm excited. I'm excited for that. Yeah. And of course, Neve Campbell's back and Courtney Cox. So yeah. Yeah. But there have been other casting news. And do you want to run them down with me, Sam?
Of course, yes. Okay.
So one of the ones that came out a few weeks ago was that Joel McHale is going to be playing the character of Mark Evans, who is Sidney Prescott's husband, who is obviously not Mark from Scream 3, which that's kind of a bummer because I was kind of hoping that, Patrick Dempsey would reprise his role, but it's like Joel McHale's awesome. I like him in pretty much everything I've seen him in. So I'm happy with this casting news. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been fun to see Patrick Dempsey. Mm-hmm. I wonder what the story is behind him not coming back. But
yeah.
Joel McHale is great. I think that's interesting casting. I think, I wonder how much her husband will play into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad she's back. That's cool. I mean, honestly, I wasn't like terribly invested in the Sam character.
Okay.
I'm not like upset that she's not back. No disrespect to Melissa Barrera, or anyone who likes the character. I just, she's no Sid.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair point. Like I'm excited that Sidney Prescott is going to be front and center in this movie. Like that is one of the really good things about this, the prospects of this movie is that, like, I mean, she was pretty central in Scream 4, but like Scream 3, she had a reduced role. Scream 2 and Scream 1 are her movies, obviously, but 5 and 6, she's just, 6 she isn't in at all, but 5, she's just kind of like there at the end, basically. So I'm excited that it's going to be a Sidney Prescott story. For sure.
Yeah, and especially with Kevin Williamson directing.
Yes.
I Yeah, so that's exciting.
Yeah. And the second casting news is that this came out a couple of days ago, but Ethan Embry is going to be in a role in Scream 7. And like I fucking love Ethan Embry. Like, can't hardly wait. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, I'm just delighted to see him popping up in Scream 7. So, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently he's like a big convention star.
Oh, nice.
I am kind of surprised by.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of his horror credentials, he was in what, like Disturbing Behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Whoa.
brief like flashes.
That's right. He played like his brother or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in another horror movie called They. Wes Craven presents They.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of fun. Trying to think if he has any like big horror credentials though.
Yeah.
I'm looking him up right now.
Me too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, The Devil's Candy.
Oh, okay. I've never seen that one.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I guess you just don't really. He's not like an obvious horror convention guest,
right? Yeah.
But I mean, it's fitting for him to be, given the fact that he is kind of popular on the horror convention circuit. It's that's a fitting franchise for him to be in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and shall we talk about the two big casting announcements and the not kerfuffle that it's caused, but like the conversation surrounding them.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't heard yet, gird your loins. It's about to get nuts in here.
Yes. So it was announced like about a week or so ago that Scott Foley and Matthew Lillard are both going to be in Scream 7. Now, of course, yes. So for those not in the know, Scott Foley was in Scream 3. Scott Foley was killed viciously in Scream 3. And Matthew Lillard famously was in Scream 1 and was ruthlessly killed in Scream 1. So there are so many different wheels that can be turning with this that I have like a whole theory and everything that I can just dive into it really quick if you don't mind. But
yeah, go for it.
Okay. So it was announced that Scott Foley and Matthew Lillard are both going to be in Scream 7. When the news broke, like there is such a large contingent of fans that are like, "Oh, Stu's still alive. Stu's alive. Stu, there's no way that he's dead. He's still alive." And like, no, he's definitively dead, I think.
His head was fried in a TV, buddy.
Yes, after he was stabbed several times.
Yeah, he was losing a lot of blood.
Yeah. He was feeling a little woozy here. But
Clutch.
Yes. So I don't subscribe to the idea that Stu is alive. What I think, my theory, and it's funny because I texted my friend Mike, who's co-host on the podcast. I texted him when the Scott Foley one was announced. And actually, it was when both were announced. I was like, so there's been some casting news for Scream 7. In case you're not aware and you can somehow steer clear of it, maybe don't look it up. But like, if you're curious, check it out. And then he said, Googling now. And then like a couple minutes, like a minute, 30 seconds later, he's like, oh no. And like, we can talk about it. But my theory, and I think that this is supported. This is something that you and I have talked about as well. But like the whole, and okay. Let me get my bearings. So Guy Busick is writing Scream 7. He co-wrote 5 and 6 with Radio Silence, that whole collective. And did I say 5 and 6? 5 and 6. And I understand that the original vision for Scream 7 is not in existence. Like if Radio Silence had an idea for Scream 7, that's out the window because they weren't hired back, basically. Whatever Christopher Landon was working on, that's scrapped because he's not on the project anymore. Kevin Williamson and Guy Busick are bringing something new to the table. I don't know necessarily if it's going to continue so much of the continuity from 5 and 6, but what I'm getting at is that if it follows the theme, or or unless it's its own thing, but like if it follows the trajectory of it, Scream 5 is all about going back to the original. Scream 1, Woodsboro, Stu's house. Scream 6 is a play on Scream 2. They're in college. They're not in Woodsboro, but they're in college. There's a lot of callbacks. The killers, spoilers, by the way, for the franchise, I'm so sorry. The killers are familially related to the previous installment's killer. So that's echoes of Scream 2. Scream 7, if it follows that trajectory, is going to be something that is related to the industry as a whole, like the movie industry. Scream 3 was some would argue over the top parody of filmmaking in Hollywood, to the point that it's the weakest of the franchise for me. But my thought, and I know that you agree with most, if not all of this, but my thought is that I've said before that I would love for the cold open for Scream 7 to be a horror convention and have it be like a reunion for the Stab movies, like commemorating the first Stab movie or something, and have like the first kill be at a horror convention and then go from there. But I would like Scream 7 to echo Scream 3 in the way that it's eschewing. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that. I never know if I'm pronouncing that word right. Eschewing, or it's just making fun, poking fun at the industry and fandom, in a way that is satirizing the industry, like Hollywood industry and everything. And the way to do that is to do it at a horror convention, have it include cast members from Stab. And my theory is that Roman Bridger and Stu Macher are dead. They are not these Scott Foley and Matthew Lillard are not playing Stu Macher and Roman Bridger in Scream 7. I do not believe that, unless it's like flashback scenes and they're just cameos, which if they were, why would they be announcing them this early? But my theory is that they are playing Scott Foley and Matthew Lillard, and that they are actors who played Roman Bridger in Scream 3's equivalent of Stab, and Matthew Lillard played Stu in Stab. That's my theory. Don't know how it's going to shake out, but that's my theory for Scream 7. Sam, what are your thoughts?
I think that's a great theory. I would love to see an opening sequence set in a horror convention. I think that's just a great set piece, just ripe with opportunities. Actually, my wish is something a little more extreme than that.
Okay.
And this would probably never be done, but I would want an entire movie set during a weekend horror convention.
Okay.
And for Matthew Lillard and Scott Foley to play themselves, but as part of the Scream universe.
Oh, okay.
Do a full Wes Craven's New Nightmare on it and make it actually about the world of Scream, and not just Stab. But I realize that that's kind of a little too out there. But the series started as, such a meta, kind of self-reflective take on the slasher genre. So why not?
Yeah. And I was thinking about that too. And that would be such an interesting way to almost bring the whole franchise full circle, and not even the whole franchise, but just like the whole idea of meta horror full circle, because like you referenced, Wes Craven's New Nightmare is kind of, I don't know if I would say the blueprint for Scream, but like it is very, very much like a proto Scream. And it would be interesting to see Scream 7 play in that world a little bit. My reason for hoping that it doesn't do that is I don't know how the franchise would recover from that. Like, right. I don't know how it would. I don't know how a Scream 8 could be done if Scream 7 does that, which is probably a stupid thing to think, because I mean, it's a horror franchise. Like, it's that, like, how did they go from Wes Craven's New Nightmare to Nightmare on Elm Street, whatever the next one was? Like, they're like the horror genre.
That was the last one.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got like Freddy versus Jason though, but technically.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. Was it the last one? Interesting. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, and they also had the remake, but that doesn't count. But yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens in February of 2026, but yeah, it's interesting, and I'm delighted that you didn't know that Kevin Williamson was directing it.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah,
that makes me like even more invested in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm really excited about, just because, like, yeah, you were right. New Nightmare was the last one. Just to admit that I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I have such a soft spot for Kevin Williamson. Granted, I've never seen like Vampire Diaries or anything, but like I enjoyed Dawson's Creek. Obviously Scream changed my entire life. And it's just like, it's cool to see him return to the franchise. Yeah, especially after Scream 3, where he was kind of taken off the project, and replaced by Aaron Kruger, who we'll talk about a little bit later in this episode.
Yeah, that's interesting how that kind of came full circle too.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been involved in anything past 3?
I think he's just been a producer. So like, I don't know how, like, he's been involved, but not in like, well, no, I'm completely wrong. I'm so sorry. He co-wrote, like, he wrote Scream 4. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I completely forgot about that. I'm so sorry. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that's something. Like I said, it's coming out February 2026. We'll talk about it more as the year progresses, I'm sure. But Sam, we have more pressing matters to discuss. That of the latest movie from Nicholas Stoller. Are you ready for us to go into our feature review of the evening, reviewing You're Cordially Invited?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go ahead and go into this. So, as is normally the case, we're going to be doing a non-spoiler review, and then we'll do a spoiler review. I have timestamps in the show notes of the episode, which can be found at obsessiveviewer.com/OV465, or in the notes of your podcast app, or in the description if you're watching the YouTube version of this. But those timestamps will let you navigate around spoilers. When we go into spoilers, I'll play a clip from the trailer as well to give you guys a good primer for the spoilers. You don't want to get spoiled on You're Cordially Invited. I promise you that. This movie was released on January 30th, 2025 on Prime Video, and it is currently streaming on Prime Video. The premise, according to IMDb, is when two weddings are double booked at the same venue, the father of one bride and the sister of the other bride try to preserve the wedding weekend. Writer and director for this movie was Nicholas Stoller. And the cast includes Will Ferrell, Reese Witherspoon, Geraldine Viswanathan, Meredith Hagner, Jimmy Tatro, and Stoney Blyden. And Sam, let's go into our non-spoiler review of You're Cordially Invited. What were your expectations of this movie going in, and how'd you feel about it in just non-spoilers?
Honestly, my expectations going in were pretty low. I thought it looked like kind of a generic, like early 2000s romantic comedy. I think there is something inherently appealing about the kind of odd couple nature of Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just two very different personalities. So I couldn't help but want to see them clash. But it wasn't a movie I was like itching to see. But I wanted to watch. I told my in-laws we wanted to watch something dumb and fun, and my mother-in-law picked You're Cordially Invited. Nice. And it seemed harmless.
Mm-hmm.
I love Will Ferrell, and I love Reese Witherspoon, and I gotta say I didn't expect, like, from the very beginning through the end, I was just laughing my ass off.
Very nice.
Like to an embarrassing degree. I was like howling with laughter. And it's not like it's particularly clever or anything, but it goes for like pretty easy humor. Especially leaning on profanity quite a bit. But it just like got me every time. I was just like cracking up. Nice. I had a blast with it.
Nice. That's good to hear. And I'm gonna hopefully not shit on your opinion of it too much. It's not shitting on your opinion, but I don't want to yuck your yum. But I thought it was solid. What's interesting is that it does give that impression of being like that early 2000s romantic comedy sort of like template. It's, I don't want to say high concept, but it's basically like it's a central concept that's like, it's a good like elevator pitch for a movie. Like, oh, these two weddings are booked in the same venue, chaos ensues. And one of the reasons why I was interested in seeing this movie was specifically because that's the type of movie that I like. That's a good like comfort type of movie for me. Like, I love that cheeseball romantic comedy stuff. I love like R-rated comedies of the early 2000s as well. Like, this has a lot of it shares a bit of DNA with something like Nicholas Stoller's other movie, one of his other movies, his directorial debut, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which is one of the most watched movies on my Letterboxd. But like that, it shares some DNA with like Wedding Crashers, like that ilk of early 2000s R-rated comedies. And so I felt kind of at home with it. I felt kind of comfortable with it. I was energized by that. But I do feel like, for me personally, like a lot of the humor was a little bit too hit and miss. But it's balanced pretty well by the way that it deals with both families, their kind of family drama, in the pack of the family, basically. Because it's a hard juggling act to do when you have two brides, two grooms, two like family members that are increasingly more crazy as they kind of one up each other and try to sabotage each other and everything. Like, that's a lot of balls in the air for a movie that is a wedding comedy essentially. So I appreciate the balancing act that it does. I appreciate the drama that it kind of brings out without being schmaltzy or cheesy or insincere even. Like, there's a sincerity to it that I found pretty charming. But I think that there was a little bit too, I'm not going to say too many cooks, because Nicholas Stoller is the only credited writer, but I will say that it seems like there's a lot of moving pieces that, while it's juggled well, the comedy aspect just didn't land with me as often as I would have liked it to. So we can talk more in detail later, but that's kind of a broad kind of opinion of it that I had.
Sure. It has a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it definitely has a lot of like set pieces. But one of the things I appreciated was how it still kind of doesn't go too far. Like, for example, you really only see one family to an extended extent. Like Reese Witherspoon's family, you kind of get to know that whole group, and it doesn't really explore the other wedding to the same degree,
right?
But I think if it did, that would be a little bit too much. But I think what makes it funnier is that like Will Ferrell is enough of a wrecking ball just by himself.
Yes.
That it's like the fact that you have Reese's whole family being nuts, but then this one guy who's like all of their craziness combined. I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I did like that. I think that Will Ferrell toes that line really well. Like that he is this kind of not necessarily overprotective father, but he's kind of just boundaryless father. And like I like that Geraldine Viswanathan, her character Jenny, that she's like also like they have this dynamic that on the surface feels like it's like, oh, this is a very charming father-daughter relationship. This is very like they like express themselves in unique ways, and they are able to like have frank conversations with each other. And then as the movie progresses, you realize like, oh, this is much more dysfunctional than you could have imagined. And like, they're not actually saying the things that they need to say. And the way that kind of coalesces, I guess that's a word, toward the end, like the way that it kind of comes together is pretty well done in terms of the dramatic storytelling of it. Because again, when you're balancing that type of family drama with comedy, and especially more over the top comedy as the movie progresses into more chaos, like it's a hard nut to crack there without being schmaltzy or over the top. And I think that they handled that pretty well.
Yeah, and I think with the exception of one character in Reese's family, I think that side of that ensemble isn't as over the top as it could have been. Like Celia Weston as the kind of matriarch of the family delivers a pretty grounded, realistic performance. I mean, she's essentially like the difficult, judgmental, old lady who everyone's kind of tiptoeing around and trying to impress. And that could easily be like a pretty over the top character, but I think she grounds it pretty well. I think the one character who goes a little too far is the kind of raunchy sister. She kind of gets thirsty for Will Ferrell's character, and I mean, it's funny, but it's also just like one joke too many.
Yes, it is a one note kind of thing. Like it is very much just like they're hitting that same thing over and over again. And like it yields some pretty interesting dramatic stuff. Like when the siblings are all having like their kind of heart to heart, where they kind of talk about like their dysfunction and their relationship and everything. Like the stuff that comes to light from her is really interesting in terms of the family drama. But yeah, it like we get it. She's like a horny older woman. Like, okay, fine. Like we get it. Stop hitting us over the head with it. Like try something unique with that rather than just have her saying like, I'd climb him like a tree. I'm sorry, I'd climb him like a redwood. Which is a funny enough line. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's like when you say that same type of line numerous times in the movie, it's just like it gets a little stale.
Well, and obviously this movie's already pretty hard R.
Yeah.
But it holds back there by her character always prefacing everything she says or does with, if I weren't married,
yeah,
I would do such and such. And it's like, well, don't tell us, show us.
Right.
Like, you know, if you're going to already go for hard R territory, like, why not just go for it?
Yeah.
But one touch that I did think was pretty clever was making Reese Witherspoon's character a reality TV show producer, and how she kind of uses that to like understand her own family, and kind of the drama they create and the artifice that they create around themselves, and kind of the show they put on for everyone to conceal their true feelings or intentions. Like, I did think that was kind of a nice touch.
Yeah, I liked that. And I liked the way that she kind of, the family and she kind of perceive each other as misunderstanding each other or not understanding each other's kind of worldview and everything. And like, I found that to be particularly resonant because it's just, it feels very authentic. Like this whole idea of like, well, you know, you've never come out to visit me. Well, you've never invited me. And you've never come out to visit me. Well, you've never invited me. Like that kind of drama that comes up from not communicating is like, I feel like a hopefully not for everyone, but hopefully not universal, but like it's a pretty common kind of fracture in dynamics that I think is done pretty well in this movie.
Yeah, and it's a great example of, you know, how just having an open conversation can be such a game changer in any relationship. Like, you know, you might be uncomfortable for a few minutes, but it's like, why can't people just talk to each other?
Yeah.
So I think it explores that theme of, you know, communication really well. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. With regard to the comedy of the movie, like something that I felt was lacking in the movie wasn't necessarily in the comedy department, but in the pacing of it. Like this, like the movie sets itself up to be like, oh, this is one crazy weekend that they're going to have, that these two families are going to have, basically sharing a small venue for each other's weddings. And it's like the movie is chapterized basically. So like we get like the arrival, we get the rehearsal dinner, the wedding, the ceremony, the reception. Like these are like title cards that pop up. And like, this is maybe like close to spoilery stuff, but not specifics. But like, in terms of pacing, I was just like, oh, when we're at the wedding ceremony, I'm like, this should be the end of the movie. Like we've got like, this is halfway through. And like,
right.
I did feel like the second half did drag a little bit, but like, I was kind of hoping that it would be more in terms of pacing, more kind of just like careful with that. Like I understand the story they're telling is telling it through the course of the weekend and like how, like, you know, the climax of the movie isn't the wedding ceremonies, but that's almost like an inciting incident basically. But like, I don't know. I just feel like if a movie is about, you know, two weddings, I kind of feel like the movie needed to do more to prepare me specifically as a viewer, for the fact that the ceremony isn't the finale of the movie. I don't know. That's probably just a me thing, but did you feel any pain with the pacing or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about early 2000s comedies. I feel like that was a huge problem with a lot of them, is that they had this kind of clunky third act that felt interminable. And yeah, that's definitely the case here. It's also, the pacing is off in the sense that like a lot of big things happen, but it's like something big happens and then the movie goes, well, wait, that's not the big thing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then it's like something else happens. I guess I found myself there's like there's some inequality between comedic set pieces, I guess.
Yeah.
Where it's like one big disaster isn't quite as big as the next one should be.
Right. It's not escalating as well as it could. Like,
right.
Yeah. The setbacks that each party experiences are kind of varied in terms of the amount of chaos each one brings. And like, I get that in terms of introducing variety and introducing like an unpredictability to it, but like, it's also at the expense of kind of not really defining not doing a strong job of defining the motivations of each one. Like Reese Witherspoon and Will Ferrell are kind of at odds throughout this movie. And like what brings them to being at odds because of the situation that they both find themselves in, like, I feel like that's a little lacking. Like there are certain things that like, it feels like the script needed something to happen, like Will Ferrell to experience something so that his character can be like, go like full dark mode with like something that is like horrible and sabotaging like the other wedding. But like what is done to incite that is like, it feels like too, not circumstantial, but it seems like it isn't built toward it that well. But I don't know. It's a minor quibble with it. Because I did find the family dynamic and the drama surrounding the characters pretty solid.
I think I do know what you might be referencing in terms of like what pushes him over the edge.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately something that makes you think, well, shouldn't he realize this about himself already?
Right.
Like, is it that much of a shock, really?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess I'll leave that for spoilers, though.
Yeah, and we can go to spoilers here in a bit, but yeah, it just felt a little bit clunky. Yeah.
Yeah, and like by no means am I saying this is a great comedy or anything.
Sure.
I kind of like put a little bit of judgment aside and just kind of had fun with it. I do think it's a credit to Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon that it's kind of easy to go. It's easy to go with the flow of this movie with them behind the wheel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like even when we get some like glimpses of kind of over the top comedy elements, like in particular, like Will Ferrell, like they're like he veers into some very kind of like over the top stuff. Like there's one in particular that's a huge set piece that we'll talk about in spoilers. I'm pretty sure it was in the trailer or on the poster, but anyway, but like even outside of that, like when there's a scene where he and Reese Witherspoon are talking for like one of the first times since their like altercation, like when they find out that the venue's been double booked. She's like making small talk with him or saying something, and she asks about his wife, and then he's just like, she's dead, and like he says it just like that, and then like it's such an off the wall tone from him. And then what I like about it is that it calls attention to it, because he's like, that's probably not the right way to say it, or that's probably not how I should say it, or something. And I'm like, that's really good. Like Will Ferrell sells that really well. Yeah. And he sells that kind of craziness that he descends into really well as well. And the movie kind of plays with that in some pretty fun ways, by having him be kind of a wild card character in the movie. So yeah.
Yeah, I had a blast with him. And it's, this is one of his more down to earth performances. Like he's playing someone you can picture actually existing in the real world.
Yeah.
It's not Ron Burgundy or,
right.
He definitely nails being like a really awkward dad.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of fun with him.
Yeah, me too. And Reese Witherspoon was as someone who has to kind of, I don't want to say keep up with Will Ferrell's comedic chops or anything, but she there is a give and take in this movie, and I think she does that kind of that all her own version of that kind of descent into craziness, but also dealing with a lot of family drama and a lot of personal issues with what it means for her younger sister to be getting married and where she is in life and how her family perceives her and everything. There's a lot of emotional and comedic heavy lifting that needs to be done by these two performers. And I think Reese Witherspoon really held her own for someone who she does have a long history of romantic comedies and some dramatic roles as well. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I've seen her in something quite like this. That's not necessarily a romantic comedy, but it is, well, Legally Blonde, Jesus. A more extreme comedy.
Well, she's rare. I mean, she's kind of like the antagonist in this movie. But what I did appreciate is that this, in lesser hands, I think this character could be just really mean.
Yes.
And she never is outright cruel. I mean, she, definitely does some sabotaging herself, but
yeah.
It's never mean spirited or, you can always kind of sense the good, the ultimate good in her character.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this level, of control, between both of these characters, that the things that they do, throughout the movie, it veers into some aspects of it being way too, almost being too far. There are things that happen in this movie that are too far in terms of you kind of expect a comedy like this to have a resolution where it's okay, well, they'll let bygones be bygones and everything. And I'm not going to say whether or not that happens in this, but there are certain things that happen, certain set pieces that occur that feels oh, there's no coming back from this. This is really fucking things up for the other family. This is pretty extreme. But I like the way that the movie plays that as something that feels more natural to the characters in their respective arcs, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I just want to say real quick, I think one of the scenes I really enjoyed involves Will Ferrell kind of casually owning up to something pretty extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of shocking how willing he is to admit to it.
Yes.
And how calm he is about it and how calm Reese Witherspoon is about it.
Mm.
And that kind of subverted the expectations of a movie like this, where
yes,
each character kind of sees themselves as the hero of the story, so they're never going to admit to wrongdoing. And the way he does it just so casually is pretty hilarious, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I liked that. I liked that quite a bit. But what do you say we go ahead and go into spoilers for You're Cordially Invited? Yeah. And before we do that, do you have anything in non-spoilers that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I'm eager to get into spoilers because there's just so many twists and turns that I want to unpack.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So let's go ahead and go into spoilers. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. Of course, like I said, you can check the show notes for timestamps to navigate around spoilers. But to the listeners, you guys are cordially invited to our spoiler discussion after this clip from the trailer. So stay tuned.
Wait, I didn't realize you were coming so soon.
How's everything?
We're getting married. My baby sister's engaged. I'm engaged. You're gonna be my brother-in-law.
Oh my God, it's Peyton Manning.
Oh, yeah, but Peyton Manning can wait.
I can't wait to plan this.
I'm gonna plan your wedding.
How about June 1st? Honey, do we know her?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go check us in.
I'm gonna go get us checked in. Oh no. We've double booked your weddings.
All right. So spoilers on for You're Cordially Invited. And Sam, the first thing I want to bring up really quick is like when we get to the point where they're both, getting ready to check in for the wedding. Like I had this moment where I was just like, I reached a crossroads where I was like, am I going to allow myself to suspend my disbelief enough to where like there's no fucking way that there's no way that this could happen in my brain. Like if your daughter is getting married, like I feel like you would have to be in control of things. But the movie gives itself, like it does address that in a really fun way, by kind of playing up the kind of Gen Z versus, I guess, would Will Ferrell be Gen X or Boomer? Gen X? I don't know. Old.
Probably Gen X.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that kind of generational difference where his daughter's best friend is the person planning the wedding and everything. And, I don't know. I just really loved that dynamic of like her being like, well, I thought it was all taken care of. And, I communicated over email because I couldn't make a phone call or anything because of anxiety. And I don't know, just really tickled me. And it's kind of like, it kind of not necessarily comes for full circle, but it is something that kind of plays out well toward the end where, when Will Ferrell goes to find Jenny, and all of the group of friends are like, oh, you're gaslighting her. And well, wait, I thought Oliver was gaslighting her. Well, he's gaslighting her too. And I think he's like, do you even know what gaslighting means? Or what does gaslighting even mean? What does that even mean? And then he gives the definition of gaslighting and you just hear them saying oh, I've been using that wrong. I don't know, just the way that kind of pokes fun at Gen Z was a lot of fun and very unexpected from me. So yeah, anything on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of not get you too stuck in the logic of it all, because it is hard to suspend your disbelief if you think really the venue never called him, and only dealt with this young wedding planner, and yeah, so that was a good way of kind of not getting you to think of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen a little more of that.
Me too.
As the weddings played out, more conflict with kind of organizing the wedding.
Yeah, same here. I think that was kind of untapped gold, because it does pop up here and there, but I don't know. I mean, the movie is just about 2 hours long, and I also felt like this probably it's overstaying its welcome a little bit toward the middle. Again, that's probably due to me just expecting the wedding actually being the kind of the climax of the movie, and it coming halfway through the movie. But it feels like it's runs a bit long. And I kind of wish they would have been filled more with that. Cause like the movie does play with like the kind of like, the Southern, stereotypes of Reese Witherspoon's family. It kind of hits that pretty hard, and like that culture shock of like them being in California and them knowing like the Reese Witherspoon's life versus their life and how it's different and everything. Like they hit that pretty hard, and there's some good bits in that, but it just kind of also felt like a little uneven with what could have been a lot better for me, being the kind of generational thing on the other side of the story.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I do feel like Reese Witherspoon and her family is more of the focus than I expected. Like,
yeah,
it does seem like the other wedding is kind of given short shrift in comparison. But I mean, like I said earlier, like if you had too much of the other wedding, I mean, the movie's already long enough. Like,
yeah.
It is hard to balance the two. Obviously, that's the conflict of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I did, and like, I think that the side of it with Will Ferrell's side of it, it is also kind of having to do double duty with having some of that like generational stuff, but also having it develop like his relationship with his daughter throughout the movie and how that kind of comes about. Like that's really solid stuff. Like from the outset, when they first get there and like you get the hints of this kind of dysfunctional thing, but it's masquerading as this like healthy father-daughter relationship where like they like when they get into an argument and like they like he storms off and then she says to her friends like, oh, he's just going to expect to storm off and then come back and apologize and I'm just going to forgive him. And then he comes back and apologizes and then she forgives him. But then they use like therapy speak. Like they use like, it's like marriage counseling, but like for father and daughter, it's like, yeah, I hear your truth and like, I understand your feelings. And like, I just thought that was such an interesting and unique touch to the movie. And like, I don't know. I enjoyed that. I thought that was really good, especially as later on the movie kind of reveals it to be more of a Band-Aid on their actual like issues that they don't speak about, like the codependency of their relationship and how that has a negative effect on each other's lives. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Will Ferrell plays that really well. And actually, if you don't mind, this goes toward a point I was making earlier.
Oh yeah,
about something that's revealed about him. He kind of overhears Reese Witherspoon basically saying a lot of the stuff you're saying, which is that his relationship with his daughter is actually very dysfunctional and they're kind of putting on a show and it feels kind of strained. You know, he sings Islands in the Stream for her, a romantic duet. And he overhears this. He's like eavesdropping when she sang this, and he's like crestfallen from it. And that's kind of when he goes into like dark mode.
Yeah, literally, he backs away into the shadows. Like I thought that was a nice sight gag. Yeah, that was a nice touch. But it's supposed to be his like big turning point, and it just seems like, and I mean, you know, maybe it's wrong for me to criticize this. Maybe like this is the point, but it seems like something that shouldn't be so much of a shock for him. Like it's kind of obvious. Yeah. And like, that's kind of where I had an issue with the movie, was that it wasn't so much that like it's bringing to light like a lot of the dysfunction that he's not like really cognizant of, but it's more that up to that point, I feel like the movie eventually leads to them being in a relationship. Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon, not Will Ferrell and his daughter. But it leads to a romantic relationship between them. And like, I feel like that scene where he overhears like the criticisms of his relationship with his daughter, I just felt like it wasn't built up to that point. Like, I feel like there wasn't like that. There wasn't like a moment between Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon where they start to bond. Like, I feel like it was missing a scene where they would be like, okay, maybe this other person isn't that bad. Maybe we can be cordial with each other. And then him overhearing that would both completely destroy that idea and also bring to light like something like about his relationship with his daughter that he doesn't want to admit. I just feel like there was something missing there. So like the end result is just, it felt like, oh, this scene needed him to overhear this completely random conversation out of the blue for no real like reason, just completely by happenstance, so that we can bring about like a big change in the character and bring about like the next escalation of sabotage in the movie. And I'm just like, it felt very incongruous with the pace of the movie for me, but I could be nitpicking for sure.
No, I think that's a very valid point. It seems like they don't really start connecting until near the end of the movie. And there's kind of a bit of a flashback sequence that seems to sort of explain his attraction to her. Mm-hmm. And it just, I mean, it's funny, but it just kind of felt lazy to me. You see all of these previous scenes, but they all end with a little button of him smiling at her. Mm.
I honestly kind of loved that. Like, I thought that was such a weird like swing for the movie, because it's like, it's just such a big comedic beat for a movie that's been, and granted there are other big comedic beats, but like that just felt like such a surreal sort of like veering off into just like weird comedy, where I don't know, I liked, I enjoyed that. But anyway, sorry.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I guess it seems like it does a lot of heavy lifting that,
oh, definitely,
that the movie was otherwise capable of doing. Like, it has plenty of great dramatic moments already, so you wonder why there wasn't a moment of more genuine connection between them earlier on. But that's just kind of a minor for me.
Yeah, and there really wasn't that much of a like connection between them. Again, like we've been saying, like there's a lot of juggling that needs to be done in terms of the story, but like, it wasn't until Jenny says to Margot, Reese Witherspoon says like, my dad likes you, that I was like, okay, they are going to do the romantic subplot. They are going to lead to a romantic thing. And I'm like, the movie's almost over. Like, that should have been planted a lot better. And like, it is, but in a kind of lazy way in terms of the script being like each member of like the family saying like, why are you obsessed with the other person? It's like, you're just telling us that they're obsessed. Like, you're not really, it's not coming through in the actions, even though they're sabotaging each other's wedding. I don't know. It was a little bit dodgy there.
Yeah, I guess there is one scene where he explains that his daughter is everything to him, and she relates in the sense that her sister is everything to her, but I don't know. I feel like that's not enough. Like, they needed to connect to each other for a more personal reason, or like,
yes,
I don't know.
Yeah, because that kind of creates this, like, the need that they have for others is like, that doesn't necessarily communicate to us that they need each other. It just means like they're leaning on their relationships with their family. And like, that doesn't necessarily compute to, or connect to us thinking like, oh, this to solve their problem, they just need to get together. It's more like they probably need to see therapists to work through like their issues and like figure out what they need out of life. Like I'm not getting the idea that they belong together because they're both in dysfunctional families and they'll fix each other. Like that's not coming through in the movie for me.
Yeah, and I guess it also doesn't really explore like, so Reese Witherspoon's a producer, and she works in, you know, the fast-paced world of reality TV, but you don't really see her as like a cutthroat,
right?
Like organizer of anything in the movie. Like, yeah, she gets her way in terms of you know, certain conditions for the wedding, but like, I don't know, it could have been like more cutthroat, and she could have been more strategic in how she tried to balance the two weddings. Yeah,
like it seems like maybe an earlier draft of the movie had her be like a massive control freak, and I think maybe in rewrites it just became less and less a focal point for the character, because like even at the beginning, like when her assistant is like saying something like, "Oh yeah, so and so said that you were a B," and then she's like, "You mean bitch? Just say bitch." Like that just like that felt like maybe there's another version of this character that's more severe and controlling. And like I did like the stuff with the assistant where like the little cheap shots that he gets like at the end where he's like, "I love spending Thanksgiving with you and not my family," as he's taking the holiday picture. Like those are fun little asides, but it just feels like there's the character isn't as well defined as it could have been or should have been in the script, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know, like in terms of wanting her to be cutthroat, it goes back to what I said, which is like, it's already rated R.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't this movie kind of going further to the extreme? Like, if you're going to have two characters butting heads and kind of waging war against each other, I just don't feel like they do anything that shocking. I mean, I guess the big thing that Will Ferrell does is like he gets a boat to ruin the wedding ceremony of Reese Witherspoon's sister, to basically the dock that they're getting married on collapses.
Which that's an interesting set piece. That's a solid set piece, but like I also feel like Fortune Feimster, who plays like the boat person, like I feel like she probably had like a bigger role in the movie than what is in the final cut, because she just seems like she doesn't pop up until that point, but in the beginning, but like I feel like that is also like it's a big set piece in the movie, but like it feels like the movie is communicating to us that it isn't too far until the second drive-by, and like it's showing us that like, oh, Will Ferrell doesn't want that to happen, but it's also like, dude just ruined the actual ceremony of this person's wedding. Like that the first one is too far. Like it's not that's not really a forgivable thing.
and that goes back to what I was saying, is that he admits to that in like such a casual way. And Reese Witherspoon like shockingly contains her anger, but what she does in return isn't as dramatic as it could have been. Like
it doesn't feel comparable.
Yeah, like she gets her brother to dress up as some reality dance show character to like knock the cake over, and it's just like, in comparison to a dock collapsing, like it's just kind of lame. It's
kind of that's where it comes into play, that it's not really well structured in terms of the escalation and everything. Like the kind of next thing with her seeing who she thought was the fiance kissing a bridesmaid, like that's an interesting wrinkle in the story, because there are some interesting things that come about from that, but like I did like that as her acting in the best interest of Jenny, like trying, like not being like a sabotaging thing, but like wanting to communicate that, hey, this is bad. But then also the flip side of that is that Will Ferrell, like I think there's like some deep seated things where he doesn't want to lose his daughter. So like he just goes along with it without verifying it or without knowing for sure. So like there's some interesting stuff there. And then it also kind of just points out that like the relationship that they have, like Jenny and her fiance, Oliver, it's not that strong. Like it doesn't, like they don't get married at the end. Like, I don't know. I'm talking in circles about this, but like, I think that it's an interesting part of the movie. What did you make of it?
I thought it was interesting in the sense that it did show, like you said, how fragile their relationship was. And you wouldn't previously suspect that guy of cheating. He just doesn't seem like that kind of guy. So like it works in the sense that it is surprising. I guess it just like it fizzles out in kind of an anticlimactic way, because it's like you realize that he wasn't kissing another girl, and it's just kind of like, oh well, that's embarrassing, right? Like it doesn't lead to anything bigger comedically or dramatically. Really.
It's not like the thing, like it does eventually, like the movie does lead them to realize that they're not right for each other, or they're not marriage ready yet, ready for marriage. But like, that's not necessarily the fallout of that scene, of that thing. It's like the culmination of everything, which is fine, but it also feels like almost anticlimactic in a way. It just feels like a little bit like there should have been more drama associated with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is a movie that just like a lot was left on the editing room floor, or like there was studio interference. I don't know what the deal was. I mean, I don't know why there would be. It's a straight to Amazon Prime release, but and
I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe Nicholas Stoller was just like, hey, I just want to make a comedy. Let's just do this. And he just didn't put that much effort into it, I guess. Which I'm sure he did, but like, I don't know. The alligator. And we can kind of start winding down a little bit, but the alligator set piece, that was wild. It seemed almost over the top, but I enjoyed it. How did you feel about the whole him wrestling an alligator in Reese Witherspoon's room? Like that felt like it was out of a different movie.
Yeah, it really did. What's weird about that scene is that it's a pretty big swing, but then it kind of fizzles out. Like, it's actually a pretty short scene.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're going to do something that big, you kind of need room for it to breathe a little bit. Like maybe it should have gotten loose in the hotel.
Yeah.
Or like they just kind of throw it out the window and she gets bitten. And it's like, yeah, that's dramatic, but it's like if you're going to really go for broke, I feel like I've said this quite a few times now. Like, like the movie sets itself up to go to the extreme, and it never really does.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like they even said underneath the window, the open window, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna crawl back in, and they're gonna do it all over again. But like you said, it's brief. That doesn't happen. It just feels like okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and like. That's pretty crazy for him to bring an alligator.
Yes.
Like, that's nuts.
Yes.
And it's sort of, like, casually dismissed. Like, I feel like characters should have brought that up. Like, later in the movie, like, what he did and how nuts it was. But you're right. It's like it belongs in a much broader comedy.
Yeah. And it is weird. Like there's such a disproportionate level to which both of their actions are. Like he ruined the ceremony. He almost got her killed, and she knocked over the wedding cake and tried to warn his daughter that her husband, her fiance was maybe cheating on her. Like it feels like disproportionate there. So
yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that can all be, I think all questions can be answered by one of the final lines of the movie, which I think that it paints an interesting picture for Will Ferrell's character. It explains a lot. One of his final lines is, "I'm the CEO of Delta Airlines." I thought that was just, I thought that was kind of funny. Like it was unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
And that you would think a character who was the CEO of Delta Airlines would have to kind of have their shit together,
right,
a little bit more than he does.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But we can kind of wind down a bit. Is there anything else in spoilers that we haven't touched on, or do we want to wrap up our review of You're Cordially Invited?
No, I think I'm good.
Nice. Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I mean, the more I talked about it, the more flaws I saw.
Sure. I also feel like this probably wasn't the type of movie to spend an hour critiquing. To be perfectly honest.
I never thought I would have so much to say about it, or that anyone else would.
Right, right.
But that is your talent.
Oh, thank you.
Obsessive viewer, yes.
Thank you. So that's our review of You're Cordially Invited. Did I cut you off? Were you going to say something else?
No, I it has its flaws. I still enjoyed it. I would, like, if someone hadn't seen this, I would love to watch it with them.
Nice.
It's definitely flawed, but I would recommend it.
I probably would too. There's much worse comedies out there. This is definitely, it's a little long in the tooth, but it's a competently made, decent chemistry movie. It's a bit of a mixed bag for me, but overall I did appreciate the drama elements of it. And, I like that they didn't go for that many easy targets of like, oh, mismatched, like one family is way different from the other family, and that's why the big conflict of them sharing a venues comes into play. It's more about the hubris of the people involved and like the kind of deep-seated like issues that they have and how that comes about. Like there's some good stuff there, but yeah, I enjoyed it more than I expected to. On Letterboxd, I rated it 3 stars. You can follow me at Obsessive Viewer, of course. Sam, what did you rate it on Letterboxd?
I went with a pretty generous 3.5.
Nice.
Like 3 is probably like what my head is telling me to give it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense, especially now after kind of picking it apart. But I rated it like right after I watched it, so
Nice.
I was just in a very good mood.
Nice. And I think that is a perfect like that's a perfect selling point for the movie. Like in the immediate aftermath of the movie, you enjoyed it enough to rate it 3.5 stars. Like I think that's admirable for the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, that is our review of You're Cordially Invited. Once again, it is streaming on Prime Video, and I'm going to do a secondary review, but I'm going to do a solo secondary review. But when I come back from that, we're going to bring Sam back into the fold to do a potpourri section. So that's it for our featured review. Say goodbye to Sam for a brief moment while I do a secondary review, and he'll be back for potpourri. Okay, and before we get to our secondary review, I would like to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel as well, where I post occasional videos and sometimes live streams of podcasts. And finally, if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use promo code OBSESS. When you sign up for a new account, you'll get up to 2 months free, depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that in the show notes of this episode. And now, back to the show.
They tell me I view obsessively.
Hi.
Hi.
I am here to get you connected. Use this to discover information.
What is life?
I don't know if you could tell, but it's date night.
Life is people with a dog eating ice cream.
Earth, once a vibrant cradle for over 1 billion life forms.
You are a human being.
Human being.
You're special. You're worthy. You're you.
I'm me.
And the coolest part is you get to be whatever you want to be.
All right, and for tonight's secondary review, I'm going to do a solo review of Love Me, which is in theaters now. It was released in theaters in January 31st, and it saw its actual premiere at Sundance last year in January. The plot summary, courtesy of IMDb, is a post-apocalyptic romance in which a buoy and a satellite meet online and fall in love after the end of human civilization. The movie is written and directed by first-time directors Andrew Zuchero and Sam Zuchero, who are a married couple, I believe. And the cast includes Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun, which is why I reviewed Burning and Underwater on my companion review on Patreon. So for this secondary review, I'm going to do a non-spoiler review. And just kind of leave you guys to it, leave you guys to see it on your own, because I don't really want to spoil it. This was a movie that I kind of caught wind of when it was kind of making the rounds at Sundance last year, and I was very much intrigued by it. I didn't know much about it itself, just that it only had Stephen Yeun and Kristen Stewart in it, and it was a science fiction movie about romantic relationships. So that's all I knew. And as the kind of time progressed and it eventually got a release date for like a wide release, I got more interested in it. And unfortunately, it wasn't playing near me really, but I was able to watch a screener of it. But I was surprised to see how many people kind of really disliked this on Letterboxd. And I get it. I understand. And my review is not going to be controlled by like what everyone else said or anything. It's not going to be influenced by that. I just wanted to point out that it's really interesting to see it kind of get dragged quite a bit, because in certain respects, it kind of deserves that to a small degree, specifically because on the surface, it really does feel like this derivative science fiction drama. It really is incredibly reminiscent of movies like WALL-E and Her. Basically, the movie is about the apocalypse. It is after all life on Earth has become extinct, and a satellite who's making the rounds, orbiting Earth as just like the last vestige of human life, the last influence of human life. Kind of similar to the Voyager spacecraft with a golden record, but kind of a bigger deal than that, because it includes like thousands of petabytes. I don't even know what a petabyte is, of data about humanity and our mark on the planet. And it takes place after the extinction of the human race and all life on Earth. And these two objects, these two pieces of machinery find each other, and they connect, and they become entangled in this romantic relationship. And basically, in that respect, it does feel a bit like WALL-E, because WALL-E is two robots falling in love after like Earth has been vacated, basically. But what I found so fascinating about this is that it really does something a little bit more unique than the derivative kind of detractors of the detractors of the movie who say it's derivative, like I just said 2 minutes ago. That they like that. It doesn't give it enough credit. It doesn't give it enough credit because this movie does have some interesting things to say about human relationships, and in particular, how human relationships, how people perceive themselves, and they have they build their expectations for real life relationships based on things like reality television and social media influencers. That's a big deal in this movie because the information that these two pieces of I don't want to necessarily say sentient machines, but they are sentient machines. These two pieces of machines, the things that they are using to build this relationship with each other is a social media influencer, like footage from a vlog, basically. And I found that to be really interesting as this dive into how people in relationships, how people who have a platform or build a platform around their relationship on social media, how the perception of their inner relationship is perceived by the people viewing it, and how that informs, like I said, it informs people's expectations for their own relationships. So there's some really interesting stuff and complexity to this movie that I do really wish would have been delved into a little bit deeper and explored a little bit more thoroughly. But what's there is really pretty fascinating because it just kind of starts with this naivete from the Bowie, who is voiced by Kristen Stewart. She kind of discovers this vlog, this social media influencer, and she learns how, like, what the mechanics of a relationship are, like what the basic structure of a relationship is. And when she connects with IM, which is the satellite, she tries to impose on him those standards and those ideas that are present only in the one source of relationship, like experience that she has seen. And I think that has just a profound statement to it, this profound subtext. And I mean, it's pretty overt, but this profound nature to it that is about how self-involved we are and how involved we are in other people's lives because of social media. And I think that that's a really unique way to bring us into this story. And here's the thing. The movie could have just been that. It could have just been that, but it goes a lot deeper into the mechanics of the relationship as it grows over a very, very vast amount of time. And I just found that to be really interesting. Like, this is a movie that clearly has things to say about what it's like to be in a relationship, what it's like to be someone who is giving themselves to another person. And just the kind of icing on the cake is that it's a satellite and a buoy. It's weird. It's strange. It's out there and everything, but it's weird. Slight, like this isn't really a spoiler, but slight spoilers. If you don't want to know some of the more plot mechanics of it, you can kind of skip ahead. But like, the thing that I kept thinking partway through the movie was like, I just watched a scene where a satellite becomes sort of an incel because he discovers that his girlfriend was gaslighting him. It was a buoy that was gaslighting him, or not gaslighting, but catfishing him. And like, just that sentence is so bizarre and so weird. And I think that the movie deserves some points for making me like think that and make me like reckon with that. But there's also like, there's other elements to it that does feel derivative. There's a long section of the movie that I think is to the detriment of the movie, where basically it kind of follows a similar structure to any kind of romantic drama or romantic comedy. There's obviously like a section of the movie where the two spend time apart. I won't say why they spend time apart, or what the inciting incident of that is, but it reminded me a lot of like this animated movie I saw a couple years ago, Robot Dreams, which I really liked, but it kind of reminded me of that. And like when you piece it together, that it's like if you think of like Robot Dreams, Her, and the other movie that I referenced that I'm blanking on entirely, I just referenced it. Her, what was the movie? Oh my God, I even referenced it on my Letterboxd review. I'm really blanking on this. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. And the farther I get like in my brain about it, the further it gets from me. WALL-E, of course, it's WALL-E. Jesus. So anyway, so when you take those components, WALL-E, Her, and Robot Dreams, it like this movie does feel on the surface extremely derivative, but it does have a unique story to tell, a unique message to send, a unique kind of vision in its offering. And I do think it deserves some points for that. And I do think that the acting is really pretty spectacular, because you have Kristen Stewart and Steven Yeun. They're playing off of each other. There's a long stretch of the movie where it's animated, and it kind of evolves from voice acting as the buoy and the satellite, then an animated sequence, and then live action is sprinkled throughout. And it's pretty riveting once they get to kind of like their complete form, basically. Like the actual kind of live action portion is, it's so, what I found so fascinating about it was that it led to a point where it becomes a conventional romantic drama. It becomes a conventional, like very pretty intense drama that's playing out between these two characters. And again, it's the fact that it's a satellite and a buoy that's kind of just a little bit remarkable to me, because it gets to the point where it is doing those conventions of the genre, and it's doing so in a way that is like, it's not playing it up for comedy by any stretch, but there's a little bit of a comedic element to it that's like when they reconnect, they're finding joy, like pure joy in the fact that water exists where they are. And there's like elements to that I thought was really charming and really fun. It kind of reminded me of like not 50 Shades of Grey, but 500 Days of Summer when they're at IKEA. And kind of playing pretend as like domestic life and everything. It's kind of similar to that. Again, another thing that it's taking influence from. So I'm kind of talking myself into a corner because I rated this 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. I really do think that it has a lot of interesting things to say and does so in an interesting way. But like I was saying, once it gets to that kind of the kind of final evolution, the final act of the movie, it becomes that conventional romantic drama. And I just found so much. I found myself being so fascinated by that because it gets to a point where these two inanimate, sentient objects become basically human. Like they are having like human interactions with one another. And I think that that's a really good mark of the storytelling of the movie and the kind of purpose behind it. And again, I do wish that it would have delved more into some of the dynamics of the relationship and the complexities of the relationship a little bit earlier and more as it was unfolding. But for the most part, this was a really, really interesting movie. It is like 90 minutes long. It does feel a little bit long. It does kind of wear out its welcome a little bit, but I will say the production design is really, really interesting and looks very crisp and very, very slick. There's some really very slick visual effects and set design in the movie that I found really interesting. And it also does have like pretty much the standard thing, like, oh, look how insignificant we as the human race is in the grand scheme of things. So there's some really interesting, weighty science fiction stuff there. And obviously this is my wheelhouse. This is something that I am such an easy mark for. I am such, like, this movie, this is the type of movie that's built for me, just like WALL-E was, just like Her was, just like Robot Dreams was. It is just this interesting intersection between science fiction and relationship dramas and like human interest drama, human drama, that plays out in the science fiction landscape. And I kind of ate it up. Like I said, I'm an easy mark for this. People are kind of dragging it online, which that's their opinion. You know, it's all good, like whatever. But I do hope that if you're listening to this and you're curious about Love Me, I do recommend checking it out. And let me know what you think of it, because I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I rated it 4 stars. Probably won't make my top 10 because it's still very early, and I don't know. We'll see. But I might revisit this down the road and reevaluate it toward the end of the year, because this is something that I feel like is going to grow on me as the year progresses. It's going to I'm going to kind of sit with it and kind of think about some of the aspects of it, and I'll report back. But that is my secondary review for this week's episode. Once again, I rated it 4 stars on Letterboxd, and check it out and let me know what you think. It's currently in theaters, and now let's go ahead and bring back Sam Watermeier to round out the episode with a potpourri segment. So here we go.
They tell me I view obsessively.
All right, and Sam is back for a probably quick potpourri section for this episode. Sam, welcome back to the show after, being out for, the last 3 hours I spent talking about Love Me, probably. So Potpourri is the section of the podcast where we kind of wind things down and we share some thoughts about things we're looking forward to, things we've watched recently, whatever we want, as long as it smells good. Sam, do you want to share some potpourri, like anything that you've watched lately that you want to kind of talk about and highlight here in kind of a round robin fashion?
Definitely. I'm actually going to pull up my Letterboxd right now.
Nice.
For just a reminder of what I've seen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, you can follow him at Sam Movie Man.
So the last movie I watched was it's called Vim. It's from 2006. So before The Strangers, but it's very similar to The Strangers. Okay. It's about a couple being terrorized over the course of one night. It's even more stripped down than The Strangers in the sense that you really don't get to know the couple very well at all. It just kind of plunges you into them being alone in a big house, surrounded by wilderness, and a group of strangers are terrorizing them, trying to get in, trying to hurt them. The movie looks like dog shit. It's a really ugly looking movie.
Okay.
Which kind of works for it. It works with the tone and the atmosphere.
Okay.
But just very drab, dreary digital cinematography. Looks like shit. And it's kind of distracting, but once the terror sets in, it kind of works.
Nice.
It has some fun cat and mouse sequences, some fun I call them hide and go chase scenes.
Nice.
There's a sequence set in a sewer that's pretty cool. It's not a great movie, but it's it's an hour and 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking for just a lean, mean, straightforward slasher movie, I'd say that's pretty good.
Nice. Okay. And did you watch it on Shudder?
Yes, I did.
Nice. Okay, I will maybe see it at some point. I can't make any guarantees.
I mean, don't like rush out or anything
Mhm.
to see it. I mean, there's nowhere to go rushing out besides your own home.
Right.
But you know, it's a neat little movie.
Nice. That's Them from 2006. Yeah, and it's on Shudder. I will go ahead and wind down the episode with my own potpourri that I've been trying to do potpourri reviews for movies that the guests have rated highly, and I didn't do that this week, but I did stumble upon kind of by happenstance one that you rated 4.5 stars. I didn't watch it because you rated 4.5 stars. I watched it because I was just bored. But yeah, I watched Arlington Road from 1999. A movie that you rated 4.5 stars. I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. The plot summary, just in case you don't know, is a man begins to suspect his neighbors are not what they appear to be, and their secrets could be deadly. This was a movie that was on my radar for a long time, because it kind of came out at a time when it was an interesting intersection between me being really starting to really, really, really get into movies, and also the climate of the time. A couple of years after this is when it kind of came on my radar because 9/11, and I was more terrified of everything, and I thought this was an interesting premise, but I never saw it. And seeing it now in 2025 was such an interesting experience because this movie definitely exists in that weird interim between the Oklahoma City bombing and like you mentioned in your Letterboxd review, the Columbine massacre, and 9/11. This is a movie about a man who believes that his neighbor is a domestic terrorist. And the movie sets up that whole bleakness, that suspense through the eyes of someone who wants to kill you and your family could be your next door neighbor, and they want to do it because of political ideologies, or they want to do it because they're just insane. And that is kind of at the heart of everyday normal Americans in that era being afraid of Waco and Oklahoma City and Columbine, school shootings, all of these things. And it kind of creates this interesting kind of time capsule of that era, because September 11th, 2001, that, it's hackneyed to say, it changed everything. It became the war on terror, as terrorists being religious extremists from other parts of the world and not in our backyards or anything. And it's also interesting to see the pendulum swing back with January 6th. But I shouldn't say that because they all got pardoned. So anyway, so I just found this to be a fascinating movie, and the suspense, the drama, the acting between Tim Robbins and Jeff Bridges is really, really good. This is an interesting, I don't want to say diamond in the rough, but it's an interesting time capsule. It's an interesting just blip of suspense and thriller in the late 90s before, everything changed in 2001. So Arlington Road, how do you feel about it, Sam?
First, very well said.
Thank you.
I agree with everything you said. Thought that was very well put. It is a great time capsule. Sadly, it's even more relevant now.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is, the case for a lot of great movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I have kind of a special relationship with this one. Because,
yes.
Well, first I'll say I almost saw it in the theater. I was a very sensitive little boy, And I went through a period of childhood where if anything like too scary happened on the big screen, I like couldn't handle it. I couldn't even be in the theater. And this movie has kind of a disturbing opening sequence.
Yes.
Which I didn't even get through the whole opening.
Oh, wow.
Like just the kind of blurry images of a bloody boy walking down a neighborhood street freaked me out so much that I ran out of the theater.
Wow.
I was probably a little too young to be seeing it anyway. I was like 8 years old. But I did want to see it. I went with my mom and my brother, and I ran out of the theater. Didn't want to go back. My mom and I ended up seeing The Water Boy. Or not The Water Boy, Big Daddy.
Oh, okay.
We saw Big Daddy. And it's kind of embarrassing now because, like, although that sequence is disturbing, it's like, I can handle it. Like, it's not, I mean, it's not that disturbing.
But I mean, and I would wager, like, I mean, maybe you had this in your brain, but like, to think about it in terms of 1999, like, I'm curious to see what people thought in the moment, because like I said, it's before 9/11, but like, just the imagery alone is really kind of visceral in the fact that you're seeing this, you know, image, like scattered images of violence, that is a child, and he's walking in like the most like picturesque, like suburban neighborhood. Like the juxtaposition of that is really unsettling in a deep emotional way, aside from like the kind of just bloody imagery. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, like, it was very fitting imagery because, like, we had seen the Columbine massacre take place, and, you know, that was another instance where you would never think you would see, you know, blood in an American school.
Yeah.
So, like, there was a lot of, like, baggage around that imagery. And I was slightly aware of it at the time, like, even as, you know, an 8-year-old, like, I remember Columbine being on the news and being, you know, quite scared. But so I didn't get through the rest of the movie, but I was still interested in seeing it. And my parents got it for me as a birthday present, as my first DVD in the promise of a DVD player.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So it was like a little tease, like, you know, I got that. We will eventually get a DVD player.
Nice.
So I just like obsessed over the case.
Oh, that's awesome.
Arlington Road. And it was just like sitting there waiting for me to finally get up the bravery to watch it. So it was the first DVD I ever owned.
I love that. That's so, and that's something that I feel like the damn kids today can't really, I don't know if I would say can't really relate to, but like, just like that, the way that the package of a DVD or like even a VHS, like the cover art of it is like becomes this like this kind of not tactile, but like this thing that is indicative of like, this is like the art of the movie. Like this is, and granted, like it's just selling you on the movie, but like just having like a physical thing, like a tactile thing that you can touch and see. And like, I think that's something that's missing as you're scrolling through Netflix.
Oh, totally.
For something. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like getting a movie, like either renting or buying a movie, was like an event. Like it was like it was a fun thing to go out and do. And I do feel like we've kind of lost that. Like,
yes,
sometimes I will just endlessly browse through a streaming platform and never choose anything. I'll just fall asleep. And I do think that maybe if we had those cases again, like when you went to Blockbuster, you felt like you kind of had to commit.
Yes. And it was like a ticking clock thing. Like,
yeah,
you know, you don't want to be in the store for longer than you are supposed to be or should be. And like, you know, like your parents, maybe they had shit going on. Like you need to pick something. But like I remember, and this is something that, and this is just getting into nostalgia for video stores. I'm sorry, but like like something that I feel like I missed out on because of my own like neuroses, my own like mental illness really, but like something that like Tiny would do is like when he and I like worked together, and even before then, like when we were like in high school and stuff, he'd be like, oh, I saw this movie over the weekend, and I was like, oh wow, how'd you find it? And like it's like a distinct difference between the two of us and our way of thinking, because like me, I'm like, okay, the IMDb top 250, okay, this one is on here, I'm gonna have to see this, I'm gonna have to see this director's other work, I'm gonna have to see this, and then in order to watch this, I'm gonna have to watch this first because there's something about this here and it's related to this, and like I'm just like, I'm an idiot, but like Tiny would be like, oh yeah, watch this movie. I just picked it up at Blockbuster and just the cover looked cool, so I'm gonna get it. Like I just got it and I saw it. It was really good. I'm like, yes. I wish I had done that more. Knowing how finite a time I had with video stores, I wish I would have committed to that more. But now it's too late.
Well, I feel like a lot of my decision making had to do with the cover art.
Nice.
Yeah, and I like remember like certain covers are just like burned in my brain.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so it was a special time. Yeah. I do kind of miss that.
Yeah, same here. I do get some of that, and I think I'm going to try to do more like that with like film festivals and doing that. I think that's a good compromise. I can kind of scratch that itch this year in some festivals, I think. So yeah. But Arlington Road, really great. I enjoyed it. That Scream connection we alluded to is Aaron Kruger wrote it. Aaron Kruger wrote Scream 3, for better or worse. That movie has a lot of defenders. I didn't really like it, but it's still a Scream movie. I loved it. Yeah. It's a tough relationship I have with that franchise. But yeah.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I mean, you'll probably think this is blasphemy, but I enjoy it just as much as Scream 2, at least.
Whew, that's fair.
Take a breath.
Yeah,
it's okay.
No, that is totally fine. I'm happy to hear that. It's also funny that I rewatched Scream 5 this past week, and like and this will be the last thing we can close out the episode, I promise, but like I watched Scream 5 because like the news about the casting and everything of Scream 7, I was like, I want to watch the Radio Silence movies again. So I rewatched Scream 5 and like I logged it on Letterboxd, and I was like, I looked at it and I wrote this on Letterboxd, but I was like, okay, who am I kidding? Like I had it at 4.5 stars. I was like, who am I kidding? This is my 10th time watching this movie, and it came out 3 years ago. This is a 5-star movie. Like, if it's not a 5-star movie, what am I even doing here? So yeah.
I'm glad you allowed yourself to give it 5 stars.
Yes. Again, it is all of my neuroses and my mental illness. Like I had to make a spreadsheet and make sure that every moment of the screen of the movie was accounted for to amount to 5 stars. Yeah. All right. Well, that should just about do it for this episode. Thank you so much again, Sam, for joining me for this week's episode. If you could tell people where they can find you online, and if you've got any reviews in the pipeline, or if you want to share a review that you want people to check out.
Yeah, you can find me at midwestfilmjournal.com. The next thing I have coming up is a review of Hard Eyes coming out this week. I've thought about doing a little piece on Valentine's Day related horror movies.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if I'm going to do that, but maybe.
Nice.
And yeah, I have reviews of Companion and Presents. And you can find me on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man.
Perfect. Well, thank you once again. And this is episode 1 of 20 in 2025, as you promised. So
yes.
Yes.
No, thank you. It's always a blast.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. As always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast hosted by myself and Tiny, and Anthology, the Twilight Zone and classic sci-fi podcast hosted by me. And also follow me on Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer. Next week on the show, my plan is to review Love Hurts and Hard Eyes. So that is going to be coming out next week. I'll also have companion reviews on Patreon. Check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Until next week, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Because it is in this kind of Hitchcockian thriller realm, it builds toward a finale that is so incredibly well done. It is like this entire movie is this like slow burn thriller tension that's mounting. Like, it's to the point where the end of the movie, which I'm 100% not going to give away by any stretch here, but the moment at the end of the movie, the kind of big finale of the movie, is kind of jaw-dropping, specifically because it's unlike anything that we've seen in the movie thus far. And it is such a massive pivot, and it is such a big moment that just ties everything together so well that that if the movie had ended 5 to 10 minutes early, there's a moment 5 to 10 minutes before the end of the movie where I fully expected it to cut to black and roll credits, and I was going to be furious. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience and their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.